Today on AI Paper Podcasts, we are looking at hallucitation matters, revealing the impact of hallucinated references with 300 hallucinated papers in ACL conferences.
Yep, by Sakai, Kamigato, and Watanabe. And for the 1-minute summary, this one's a doozy.
It really is. The authors basically did a forensic investigation of 17,000 papers from ACL, NAACL, and EMNLP.
And they found a massive spike in fake citations. It jumped from maybe 20 papers in 2024 to 275 in 2025.
And the epicenter was EMNLP 2025, with over half the cases. What's wild is that 70% of these were in the main and findings tracks.
Right, not just some workshop papers. But here's the twist. It's not just AI writing fake stuff.
No, the big finding is that databases like Google Scholar are getting contaminated with ghost entries that people are just copying.
So the conclusion is pretty stark. The reliability of our references is degrading fast. And our current manual review process just isn't catching it.
It's a detective story, really, and for anyone listening who's an ML engineer, this isn't some abstract academic problem.
Not at all. It's about data contamination in the very corpus we use to, define the state of the art.
Exactly. So let's get into the weeds of how they actually found this. Because, usually when we talk about hallucination, it's benchmarking a model on a few hundred prompts.
Right. This was completely different. They went full-scale excavation mode.
Calling it a haystack is an understatement. 17,000 PDF files.
It's incredible. They scraped the entire ACL anthology for NA, ACL, ACL, and EMNLP for 24 and 25. They didn't just sample.
They took everything. And anyone who's ever tried to parse a PDF knows that's not trivial. You can't just Control+F for a fake citation.
Oh, no. The engineering pipeline they built is actually super impressive. They started with a tool called minor U for the extraction.
Minor U, right. That's for getting text out at the block level, which you'd need for messy reference columns.
Precisely. Because standard OCR just mangles that kind of formatting. Then they pass those raw text blocks to Drobid.
Which is pretty much the industry standard for parsing bibliographies, turning that raw text into, author, title, venue.
Exactly. But even Drobid needed some help. They had to feed it explicit reference blocks to make sure it was catching everything correctly.
Okay, so now they've got, over 740,000 structured citations. How on earth do you verify all of those?
Well, they filtered it down first. They only looked at citations that claimed to be from an ACL venue or Archivfall.
Smart. So they're not trying to verify some physics paper from 1980.
Right. Then they ran a verification pipeline using fuzzy matching, specifically the normalized Levenstein distance.
Which is basically the edit distance, right? How many changes you need to make to turn one string into another.
Yep. They set a similarity threshold of 0.9. If the score between the citation and any real paper was below that, it got flagged as a candidate.
But a low score isn't proof. It could just be a typo.
Exactly, which is why they didn't stop there. They took all those candidates, about 2,950 of them, and manually verified every single one.
Manually?
Manually, checking PDFs, web searches, DBLP, OpenAlex. And they were super conservative. If they couldn't prove a paper didn't exist, they let it slide.
So the final numbers, those 275 papers in 2025, that's a lower bound.
Almost certainly, yeah. The real number's probably higher.
Let's talk about that explosion. Going from around 20 papers to 275 is, it's a vertical line on a graph.
It's stark. In 2024, it was about 0.28% of papers that were hallucinated. That's the term they use.
Meaning they contained at least one fake reference.
Right. By 2025, that jumped to 2.59% overall. But if you just look at EMNLP 2025, it hits 3.7%.
3.7. So if I'm at EMNLP and I grab a stack of 30 papers, one of them is statistically citing work that doesn't exist.
That's the reality, yeah. And we have to get rid of this idea that it's just a workshop problem.
I think we all have that bias, that workshops are where the less polished stuff goes.
And maybe in 2024 that was somewhat true. But by EMNLP 2025, the infection had moved up. The main and findings tracks accounted for almost 70% of the hallucinated papers.
That's what's so scary. These are the papers that define the field, the ones we build our own work on top of. So why is this slipping through peer review?
Well, the authors point to a volume problem. The field is just growing so fast.
So conferences have to recruit more and more reviewers, and the average experience level inevitably goes down.
Right. You've got reviewers looking at papers on topics they aren't deep experts in, and they're always on a tight deadline.
Yeah, if I'm reviewing a paper on, say, LLM efficiency, and I see a citation that looks plausible, I'm probably not going to stop my whole workflow to Google it.
You're just not. You assume the author did their job. And the study actually profiled what these papers look like. The high-risk areas are exactly what you'd guess.
Let me guess. LLM efficiency, AI agents, and safety and alignment.
You got it. The booming, high-noise fields where everyone's rushing to publish.
Makes sense. And the lower risk areas.
Things like interpretability and NLP applications. They also did a keyword analysis using TF-IDF.
To find words that are unusually common in the bad papers.
Exactly. Hallucinated papers tend to use abbreviations in their titles, like LLM, instead of writing out large language model. They also use buzzwords like multimodal, decoding, quantization. The cleaner papers were more likely to use words like human, reasoning, preference.
It paints a picture, doesn't it? A certain type of paper may be rushing to catch a trend, but the thing that makes them so hard to catch is the stealth factor you mentioned.
Yes, this is key. About 2/3 of the hallucinated papers had only 1 or 2 fake citations.
Just 1 or 2, hidden among dozens of real ones.
Exactly. It's not like the whole bibliography is fake. So for a reviewer, it just looks like a typo, not a red flag.
Unless you're a world expert in that tiny sub-niche, you'd never know that Smith et al. Didn't actually write that paper.
You'd just miss it. But they did find a threshold, a kind of red flag number.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, if a paper has 4 or more of those candidate citations, the ones the fuzzy matcher flagged, there's a nearly 75% chance it contains a confirmed hallucination.
So 4 is the magic number. That's a great heuristic for an automated tool.
It is. But we have to talk about the root causes. Because everyone's first thought is just generative AI.
Right. Someone told ChatGPT to write a literature review. It made stuff up, and they didn't check. And, I mean, the timeline fits perfectly.
For sure, that is a huge part of it. But the authors argue really strongly that it's not the only cause. They introduced the database contamination theory.
And this is the part that genuinely terrified me. The idea that the tools we trust, like Google Scholar, are polluted.
It's happening. They found concrete cases. In their case study, too, a paper cited something called distraction-based attack prompts by Chen et al., supposedly from ECL 2024.
And let's be clear, that paper does not exist. It's not in the proceedings.
It does not exist. But if you search for it on Google Scholar, there's an entry for it.
How is that even possible?
Well, Google Scholar is a crawler. It's automated. It might have seen the citation in another paper's bibliography and just created an entry for it, assuming it was real.
Oh, that's bad. So an author doing honest work searches a topic, sees that result, clicks cite.
And boom, they've just propagated a hallucination without ever touching an LLM. They just trusted the index. And it gets worse.
Of course it does.
There was another case of an incorrect RCAF ID that got copied and pasted into hundreds of other papers. It's like a virus.
And now you have these new AI scientist agents that are being designed to do automated literature reviews by scraping these very databases.
That's the feedback loop from hell. The AI scrapes a contaminated database, cites a fake paper and a new paper it generates. That paper gets published.
Which then gets indexed by Google Scholar, making the original fake entry seem even more legitimate. It's a self-reinforcing delusion.
It really is. And you have to add the human element on top of it all. Reviewer fatigue.
Right. The paper mentions that reviewers get penalized for being late. Your own paper might get desk rejected.
Which creates a perverse incentive, right? Speed over rigor. The system is pushing you to just get the review done, not to spend an extra hour verifying citations.
So it's a perfect storm: AI generation, dirty databases, and an overwhelmed review system. Okay, so what's the solution? We've got 300 papers out there with fake citations. Do we just retract them all?
The authors argue against that, actually, against immediate punishment or retraction. And I think they have a point.
Why? If the paper's citing fake work, isn't it fundamentally flawed?
Not necessarily. A fake citation in the related works section doesn't automatically invalidate the experiment in the results section. And a lot of these could be unintentional errors from those bad databases. Core scientific contribution might still be totally valid.
Okay, so if we don't punish, we have to prevent.
Exactly. Prevention. They recommend author toolkits.
Yeah.
Basically, an automated reference scanner that you have to run before you can even submit.
Like a linter for code? We should have a linter for citations. That seems like a no-brainer.
Totally. It would flag any citation that doesn't resolve to a known DOI or OurSIF ID. And they also suggest using that 4+ candidate heuristic.
So if your paper hits that threshold, it automatically triggers a mandatory manual check of your whole bibliography.
Precisely. The other big piece is traceability, because right now the process is kind of a black box.
Yeah, a reviewer can ask for a correction, but we have no way of knowing if it actually gets fixed in the final camera-ready version.
None at all. The authors call for open sourcing review materials, even for rejected papers, so we can actually analyze what's happening in the review process itself.
It really feels like we're at a tipping point. This paper lays it all out, 300 papers, that crazy spike in 2025, and it's driven by this mix of AI, duty data, and a broken system.
And you have to remember, this is just NLP conferences, just ACL, NAACL, and EMNLP. Imagine running this same scan on medical journals or physics.
That is a deeply uncomfortable thought.
It leads to a bigger question, I think, about the structure of knowledge itself. Citations are the hyperlinks of science. They're the chain connecting everything together.
And if those links start pointing to nowhere?
Or worse, to phantom nodes that other links also point to, the whole structure of scientific authority starts to wobble. It's like that concept of model collapse in AI training.
Where a model trained on AI-generated output just gets progressively dumber?
Exactly. But this is the model collapse, the scientific record. If our automated agents start citing non-existent papers based on bad Google Scholar entries, and then other agents cite those papers, we're building a castle on a foundation of clouds.
So to wrap up, what's the one thing our listeners should do if you're writing a paper right now?
But don't trust the export button. I mean it. If you find a paper on a secondary source like Google Scholar, click through, open the actual PDF, check the archive ID against the official site. If you cannot see the primary source file with your own eyes, do not cite it.
Verify, verify, verify. We'll link the paper HalluCitation Matters in the show notes. It is a fantastic and frankly essential read. Thanks for listening to this episode of AI Paper Podcasts.
We'll catch you in the next one.